Soon, researchers figure out how to reinvent the measles infection to assist with restoring sicknesses as opposed to causing them, and they even figure out how to fix disease. Anyway, they fail to keep a grip on this infection, and it winds up contaminating a large portion of the populace, changing them into risky freaks called Darkseekers, who feed on individuals and are feeble to daylight. 3 years after the underlying episode, New York City is a finished no man's land to the place where the zoo creatures presently uninhibitedly stroll around the roads. The main survivor is Robert, a previous armed force virologist that enjoys his days with his canine Sam. Whenever they go hunting, Sam assists Robert with tracking down the creatures, and he pursues them through the roads in anything vehicle he fells like requiring that day. Robert is constantly furnished and an extraordinary shooter, yet he likewise has a decent heart, and when he sees groups of lions hunting as well, he allows them to have the meat. He likewise keeps a caution on his watch to ensure he isn't out when the sun sets. When the caution goes off, Robert surges back to a similar house he's resided in since before the flare-up, which has been strengthened as far as possible. Robert can close every one of the entryways and windows, and he generally tries to dive the front advances so the Darkseekers can't track down his smell. Inside this house, Robert keeps a decent stockpile of food and tapes of old reports that permit him to remain rational by imagining he's going through an old daily schedule. He additionally pays attention to music, converses with Sam, and does the standard tasks like washing his canine and cooking for the two of them. Regardless of the amount he attempts to divert himself, however, his dull recollections generally creep back. When dusks, he conceals in the tub with Sam and a few guns, and the Darkseekers outside makes him consider his loved ones. At the point when the episode occurred, the public authority chose to close the island, since it was ground zero. Alarm assumed control over the roads as individuals attempted to get away from in stores. Robert raced to get his better half Zoe, their little girl Marley, and Sam, who was as yet a doggy in those days. He believed that them should pass on the island to remain with a family member, and Zoe flew off the handle when she understood Robert wasn't accompanying them since he needed to remain to dissect the infection and track down a fix. This set off a contention between them that nearly made Robert crash the vehicle. Robert hasn't abandoned the possibility of a fix even in the present. Each day in the wake of practicing with Sam, he goes to the lab in his cellar to monitor his tests. Sam isn't permitted down there since she could get tainted. However, Robert is fine since he's insusceptible. In the lab, there's a lot of confined rodents conveying the infection, and Robert has been attempting the various serums he's made on them. Every one of them fizzled until one morning, Robert finds one of the rodents is really improving. Presently, he can continue on toward the following stage of the preliminary. However, he'll require a human for that. A while later, Robert and Sam visit the video store, where Robert has set up a lot of life-sized models as a component of attempting to keep the deception of an ordinary everyday practice. He converses with them as though they were lifelong companions and consistently brings back the motion pictures he takes prior to picking another. He additionally imagines one of the life-sized models is attempting to play with him. Robert guarantees Sam that one day he'll be a tease back. Then, the pair visits the parks where Robert is developing vegetables to take some with them. They likewise keep a guide of the multitude of houses they've proactively visited and pick another one to do every day. This permits them to track down new supplies of food, albeit the things they see, as the majority of our medication and cleaning items, abandoned by the battle against the episode. Once in a while, Robert likewise tracks down truly discouraging indications of individuals that used to live there, similar to the actual bodies, or even nurseries that never became utilized. In the wake of getting gas for the vehicle, Robert continues with the last piece of his daily practice, which comprises of going toward the South Road Seaport to communicate a recording that welcomes any survivors to meet him there. While he holds up, he keeps himself engaged in various ways, such as playing golf on top of the aviation-based armed forces planes. One evening, Sam sees a deer going around, so she and Robert start pursuing it through the roads. The deer panics when it runs over a hindered street and enters an old, dim structure. Sam follows it inside, which makes Robert apprehensive on the grounds that such a dim spot could be the ideal home for Darkseekers. Since Sam won't come out when she's called, Robert needs to enter also, and he attempts to be all around as tranquil as conceivable not to offer his presence. There are a few unnerving clamors that unexpectedly alarm Robert. However, he won't leave without Sam, so he pauses for a minute to accumulate boldness and cover his electric lamp with his hand prior to going further inside. He follows a path of blood higher up that takes him to a body behind some furnishings. Briefly, Robert fears the most terrible until he understands it's not Sam, it's the deer. As he proceeds with his pursuit, Robert finds a lot of Darkseekers remaining close to a wall. Fortunately, he responds quick and steps back, getting his electric lamp far from them. Robert pivots, lastly finds Sam concealing under a work area, declining to come out on the grounds that there's something that startles her. At that point, a Darkseeker hops on Robert from behind. Robert quickly shoots him prior to taking off with Sam, advising the canine to take an alternate haul when the other Darkseekers start pursuing him. In light of an arrangement, Robert rushes to the window and hops right when the Darkseekers make up for lost time to him, This makes the daylight kill the two beasts that fall with him on the ground and keeps the others inside. In the wake of rejoining with Sam, Robert readies an exceptional snare utilizing a truck on a scaffold and some old material that the puts down at the structure's entry. He tells Sam not to follow him for this one to keep away from disease, then he takes his very own portion blood and drops it on top of the material. When a Darkseeker draws nearer to benefit from the blood, the snare initiates, making the truck fall and drag the Darkseekers out inside the material. A second Darkseeker, considered the alpha of the gathering, looks out of the structure to thunder at Robert with clear rage, just to rapidly return when the daylight starts consuming him. Minutes after the fact, Robert has the female Darkseeker he trapped in his lab tying her to the table to test the fix he's been creating. He first purposes UV light to affirm she's tainted with the infection, and he finds she has a butterfly tattoo. Robert starts by infusing the serum he's made from the rodent that got along admirably, and following a couple of moments of nothing, the Darkseeker unexpectedly starts shouting and battling against her shackles. After a snapshot of frenzy, the Darkseeker drops, and all her important bodily functions go to zero on the screen. Robert promptly gives her another infusion to keep her alive, yet he additionally can't resist the urge to shake the furniture with outrage at the disappointment. Then he puts the Darkseeker behind a glass entryway, prior to logging his advancement for the afternoon. Referencing the reality-dominant man presented himself to daylight intentionally. This makes him imagine that diminished cerebrum capability or the shortage of food is making them disregard their fundamental endurance impulses, and social devolution seems total. That helps Robert to remember the day of the flare-up again, in light of the fact that individuals were acting like insane in the city. Heaps of boats were departing the island, yet just those with freedom were permitted to pass, and individuals could have done without being abandoned in isolation, particularly those with kids that asked others for help. The streets had been impeded by the military, however the fighters had requests to accompany Robert and his family to somewhere safe and secure. In this way they progressed forward with foot. At the point when they arrive at the harbor, the troopers utilized a scanner to ensure they weren't contaminated. Marley passed yet so didn't. Mother and little girl overreacted on the grounds that they would have rather not been isolated, provoking Robert to cause a ruckus and take advantage to arrange a subsequent sweep. Zoe breezed through the assessment this time, and on the grounds that they were a military family, they got to leave on a helicopter. Robert demanded remaining and expressed farewell to Zoe and Marley, who chose to leave Sam with him so she could safeguard him. As the helicopter took off, Marley made a butterfly with her hands as a farewell. Back to the present, Robert and Sam go through their typical everyday practice. Except by the day's end when they're going to return home, some abnormal occurs. There's a life-sized model close to the scaffold, and Robert is certain he didn't put it there. Feeling like he's going off the deep end, Robert takes shots at the life-sized model, as though to demonstrate it isn't genuine. The life-sized model simply tumbles to the ground. Then Robert figures he can hear some murmuring around him and starts taking shots at the air like there's no tomorrow. Since nothing occurs, Robert chooses to look at the life-sized model. Yet when he draws nearer, a vehicle falls and he's gotten by a rope. It turns out the Darkseekers duplicated his snare. Sam hits his head, and he drops as blood trickles on the ground. Minutes after the fact, Robert awakens when his watch's caution goes off. Sam is still there, and the sun is going to set, so Robert utilizes a blade to remove the rope. At the point when he tumbles to the ground, he harms his leg, and presently he needs to drag his body through the ground to leave. Sam from the get-go follows him. However, she stops when she hears some snarling coming from a structure. The alpha is there with a lot of contaminated canines, and he releases them to pursue Robert. Yet the canines step back when they nearly get injured by the last piece of daylight. Robert drives himself to stand up and hurry to his vehicle to recover a firearm, just before the sun gets done with setting, permitting the canines to assault. One of them hops on Sam and nibbles her while Robert battles the others, battling against a monster, prior to figuring out how to snatch his weapon appropriately and shoot them each of the individually. Sam is in torment, so Robert overlooks his own to get her and take her to the lab, where he gives her a portion of his serum. Then he embraces her and sings a tune for her. However, gradually, Sam's beginning to turn. Crushed, Robert must choose the option to euthanize her, overlooking her barks of dissent until she's dead. Subsequent to lamenting her appropriately, Robert gives Sam an entombment in the nursery, prior to attempting to return to his daily practice. He takes a great deal of medication to attempt to fail to remember the aggravation, and when he goes to the video store, he at long last visits with the being a tease life-sized model, saying he guaranteed his closest companion he would do as such. Clearly the life-sized model doesn't argue, and this makes something in Robert at last break. Enraged and hopeless, Robert takes his vehicle out around evening time to run over a lot of Darkseekers in retribution. He figures out how to kill a couple of them, yet the others assault him compelled. They even trip a light post to make it fall on top of Robert's vehicle. Then, at that point, they flip the vehicle over to stall Robert out inside. However, when the Alpha enters the vehicle through the window, and UV light abruptly blinds them all and makes the Darkseekers escape. Robert isn't feeling great since he hit his head when the vehicle was flipped. However, he can see there's someone else removing him in their vehicle. This individual requests that Word take him, so Robert gives them his location and requests that they ensure they aren't followed before he drops. That evening, Robert longs for his family once more. After the helicopter removed, the public authority bombarded the extension to close the island. One of the helicopters let completely go when individuals attempted to bounce on it, and it ran into the one with Robert's family, quickly killing them. The following morning, Robert awakens to a vivified film on his television. The injury on his leg has been sewed, however he's as yet vigilant, and he gets a weapon prior to going to the kitchen, where briefly he assumes he sees family once more. Actually, this is Anna and her child Ethan. They were the ones to save him the previous evening. Anna has made breakfast, so Robert puts down the firearm and sits with them, hearing Anna's story. They come from Maryland and they came by the harbor when they heard Robert's message. They're advancing toward Vermont, since there's a protected zone brimming with survivors in the mountains where the virus ought to ward the infection off. Robert won't accept it and lets Anna know that everybody's dead as he throws his plate to the ground with outrage. Acknowledging that he is so near losing it, Robert goes higher up to have a moment alone. Whenever he's quieted down, he joins the others once more and takes the risk to statement the film to demonstrate to Ethan that he has nothing but good intentions. Robert admits he adores that film, and it's very clear he relates to the monster, since he additionally has no companions. When Robert says thanks to Anna for the salvage, they have a little talk. Anna makes sense of she had been on a Red Cross clearing transport out of San Paulo. However, those boats weren't made to be super durable. At the point when the naval force went to pieces, Anna's gathering got back to the shore to look for provisions and somebody took their boat. 5 individuals in her group were safe. However, they were killed by the Darkseekers. She actually plans to go to Vermont, yet Robert will not go with her, making sense of he needs to remain at ground zero and work on a fix. Afterward, they go to check the region where they found Robert the previous evening, and he checks the snare, seeing it was produced using the apparatuses they took from his own snare. Robert would rather not really accept that the Darkseekers did this, since they shouldn't have higher cerebrum capability, meaning they ought not be ready to plan, disdain, or love. Anna figures the Darkseekers might actually be advancing. A short time later, they take Ethan to have a great time in a wellspring, and when Robert hears Ethan whine about the virus water, he gets a thought. The triplet gets back to the house, where Robert puts the female Darkseeker on top of loads of ice, imagining that changing her internal heat level might assist the serum with working better. Anna checks out the lab and finds a lot of pictures that show Robert has tried numerous variants of the serum on people previously. However, they won't ever work. A while later, Anna finds Ethan nodded off on the lounge chair, so Robert offers to take him to his little girl's old bed. Anna finds the photos of Robert's family, and he enlightens her a piece regarding them, making sense of his girl was named after Sway Marley, who Anna never knew about. Robert can't trust this and quickly plays his #1 CD for her, admitting Sway Marley was his motivation, since he continued to sing even after he was taking shots at his own home. At the point when dusks, Robert seals every one of the windows, and again Anna attempts to persuade him to accompany them. Robert considers how she can be totally certain there's a state, and when Anna says God told her, Robert at long last snaps. He shouts at her as he brings up that the majority of mankind is dead, and the rest became beasts. Significance: there's no God. Their discussion is abruptly hindered when they hear a few commotions outside. It turns out the Darkseekers followed the smell of the bloody trickled the previous evening, and they're currently here. Anna hurries to get Ethan, while Robert turns on the lights that he introduced outside. However, the Darkseekers simply bounce on them and annihilate them. Next, Robert enacts a lot of explosives he covered for good measure, killing the primary crowd. A while later, Robert goes higher up to search for Anna, just to be hopped on by the Alpha unexpectedly. Both of them start to battle, and Robert utilizes a screwdriver he tracks down on the floor to go after him. However, the Alpha scarcely feels any aggravation and tosses Robert back first floor. Robert utilizes the opportunity to take a weapon he tucked away among the umbrellas, and when the Alpha evades the shots to conceal in another room, Robert shoots a gas canister to cause a blast. Once more, the Alpha runs higher up, and Robert follows him with open fire until he sees the Alpha leap through of the window. Subsequently, he goes searching for Anna and Ethan, finding them concealed under some furniture, while a Darkseeker obliterates the roof of that room. There's a weapon on a table close by, so Robert surges in, snatches the firearm, and takes shots at the beast right as he goes to go after him. At that point, Robert hears a commotion outside and finds the Alpha is back with significantly more Darkseekers. In this manner, the threesome races to conceal in the lab. As the Darkseekers climb the structure to enter through the opening their companion made, Robert and Anna are stunned to find the female guinea pig is improving. This implies the fix is working. Yet before they can consider their choices, the Darkseekers show up at the lab, and Robert needs to close the glass entryway between them. He attempts to let them know he can save them, however the Darkseekers don't tune in. They simply continue to raise a ruckus around town. At the point when the Alpha shows up as well, he breaks the glass with his strong strength, Then he makes a drawing that Robert perceives as a butterfly, very much like the lady's tattoo. This helps him to remember Marley, and Robert at last comprehends the Darkseekers truly do have sentiments. They're here to save their companion, not to kill. Robert puts down his weapon and, disregarding Anna's fights, separates the lady from the machines prior to removing her from the glass entryway. As the Darkseekers snarl at him with rage, Robert picks a needle and infuses the lady with some medication that makes her wake up. The Alpha promptly rubs his brow with hers, praising their gathering prior to getting her to leave. Robert attempts to apologize, yet he's just met with another snarl. Now that Robert comprehends the city has a place with the Darkseekers' general public, he acknowledges to leave with Anna and Ethan. The following morning they start their outing to Vermont. However, first Anna makes another recording. Let any survivors know that might listen where to track down the protected state.